Hi, this is Thomas with Believe in the Run.
And this is Megan with Believe in the Run.
And this is Megan with Featherstone Nutrition.
AKA Feathers.
And you're listening to Fuel for the Soul podcast.
What's this podcast about?
All about nutrition and hydration and how it affects performance.
For anyone or runners?
Mostly runners, but anyone can benefit from listening.
Let's get into it.
So before we dive into our listener question, let's talk about our sponsor, Inside Tracker. Thomas, what is Inside Tracker?
Funny you should ask. Inside Tracker is an ultra-personalized nutrition platform that uses blood work to create one-of-a-kind, science-backed action plan to help you reach your potential for better performance and a longer, healthier life.
Yeah, so they were founded in 2009, and the Boston company first started working with professional athletes who wanted to see what their biomarkers, hormone, and mineral profiles look like during their training and how they could use nutrition and lifestyle to improve.
Get this, they measure over 30 biomarkers and recommend food and supplements to optimize things like your energy, cognition, endurance, heart health, and more. And
the really great news for you all is for a limited time, Inside Tracker is offering our listeners 25% off their entire store.
Boom.
Just go to insidetracker.com/fuel.
All right, so this week we have a listener question. This is an audio file, so this is from Nick. Let's go ahead and hear it.
Oh, hey guys. How are you? Congratulations on your new podcast. Looks like I only have 1 minute here, so I better be quick. Hi, my name is Nick. I'm actually a client of Megan's and talked to her a lot, and I've gotten a lot of good insight, and I'm sure people are going to be asking, kind of about the big mistakes that runners make, not eating carbs, trying the keto diet, that kind of thing, not hydrating on their long runs and carrying a bottle, all those big mistakes that are worth repeating. But what are kind of some of the little mistakes that people make who think they kind of have a good handle on some of the basics, but that are still pretty big mistakes that they don't know about that could be pointed out? And I'm out of time. Thanks, guys.
So to summarize, I think what Nick's asking is, what are some of the mistakes people make when they're fueling and doing nutrition? Like when someone starts working with you, Feathers, do they come to you and you're like immediately like, every runner is probably doing this wrong, and it's like right off the bat, you're like, fix this?
No, actually not. It's not across the board that like there's certain things that I'm immediately like, oh, we have to fix this. We have to fix that. It's kind of like a puzzle. I think that's why I love talking to people for the first time every time, because it's like, I have the information I need to gather to figure out what we need to focus on and what we need to change. And I think I could certainly put some of those changes into different buckets that we have to work on, and kind of peg big nutrition changes that way. But it sounds like Nick's looking for like the secrets, like the little things that people are doing that they don't realize are adding up.
I mean, from experience just running with runners and hanging out with people, I feel like the biggest mistake in training runs, and then it translates into races, is that people just don't fuel enough.
Fuel during races?
Yeah, like I'll go for a run with someone and they'll be like, I have one gel for 20 miles. I'm like, that's 200 calories for, you're going to expend about 2,000 calories. So
exactly. And fueling during runs is something that I work with every single athlete on. And I totally agree with that. I would say there's very few athletes that are nailing that out the bat. Are there a couple? Yeah, those are unicorns, right? Usually, to your point, Thomas, is people aren't, fueling enough. And it's just unbelievable the performance benefits we can have from literally just taking more fuel. We look for all these things to improve our performance and performance enhancing X, Y, and Z. And, fueling during a run is like
more expensive shoes.
Who does that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll give you an example from myself. Like, I don't know why, but there's sometimes where I feel like fueling during a run is a weakness. Like you're admitting a weakness. Like I'm almost embarrassed when I'm running with a group of people and I'm like, I need food.
there's a lot of runners that feel that way, and we got to quit it, right? We got to your point. I mean, I ran with you guys last weekend. You guys have a huge crew that you run with, right? So if one person is like, nah, nutrition's weakness, that spreads like wildfire, right? So you got to be the person that's like, yo, hey, let's fuel every 30 minutes, get your gel out, right? Like, not to be annoying, but that's totally me. Like the two girls I used to train with did not fuel very often. So I would open my chews and like wrinkle the bag. So they like heard me getting ready to take it, like as a cue to like, yo, come on, we got to fuel here. Cause I think, it's really easy. If nobody else is doing it, why would I do it? So we got to kind of change that narrative.
The other day, I won't say who it was, but someone was like, oh, I did this workout, no water, no goose, nothing. And I'm like, why is this a brag? Like that's, you're not doing yourself any favors.
Yeah. It's strange to me that I've gotten to this point. I think there's the other thing that's weird about it is a lot of us get into running for weight loss, like when you first start. So I feel like there's different types of people. There's people that ran track and are maintaining and have a love affair with running into their, they just keep it going. And then there's people that maybe have been sedentary or not as active, and they get into running and they start losing some weight. And before you know it, you're feeling better about yourself. Your self-esteem is better. You're running. And I think that there's a part of that. And I would say if we're going to say about mistakes runners make is that you will be skinnier by not having that extra 120 calorie goo, or you'll be skinnier if you don't have 300 calories on your run. And it extends to after the run, not eating properly, or before the run, not eating. And I think that it's a dangerous trap to fall into, is that running starts to make you feel good about yourself and look good. And then you can easily wormhole your way into when you stop seeing those immediate results. It's kind of like PRs. You go out and you first start hitting PR after PR after PR, and then all of a sudden you plateau. And then you're fiending for that PR. And the same thing I think happens with your weight. You start running, you lose weight, you feel better, you get compliments at parties. When you see an old friend, they're like, whoa, what are you doing? Oh, I'm a runner now. And then, that you stop seeing those gains, and you might be, well, gee, I need to do that next step. I need to eat less. So do you run into that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think some of that comes from like tracking nutrition, right? So when people are trying to lose weight and they're running, they're downloading MyFitnessPal, and it's ticking down those calories all day long. And I tell people, like, first of all, I'm not a huge fan of using that as a tracker because of that reason. But if people are putting their fuel in there and they're like, well, I can't eat as much later because I took fuel during my run. I'm like, no, back up, right? Like these are two totally separate equations. Like the nutrition that we eat outside of runs and the nutrition we need to fuel our runs are totally different with totally different purposes, right? And the thing that I find that if I can just convince people to fuel their workouts, right? To your point, Thomas, to eat something beforehand, to fuel during, to eat well afterwards, we can actually perform better and gain more fitness, which does better stuff for our body composition in the end anyways, like if we're under fueling before, during, and after a run, our recovery is going to suck. So when our recovery sucks, we're breaking down muscle mass. So we don't have the body composition that we want to have. So a lot of it is education, right? And educating people like, why am I doing this? Like, I don't know about you guys, but like, if you tell me why I'm supposed to be doing something, I'm much more likely to actually do it, right? And kind of explain some of the benefits of it. Because truthfully, I mean, you guys can think like if you've done a workout fasted, whoever, Megan was talking about earlier, like you feel wrecked at the end of that, wrecked the rest of the day. Whereas if you go into a workout and you don't get too dehydrated and you take your fuel, you're going to finish faster. You're going to gain more fitness. You're going to recover quicker so that you're ready for that next run. And it's just magical if you can actually get yourself over those silly thoughts that are ingrained in our heads about weight, about body composition, about whatever it is, right? And really just start fueling more.
One of the reasons I stopped using the app that you're talking about, MyFitnessPal, was because it told me that 90% of my diet was vodka. So I was like, I got to put this thing down. But now I'm making better decisions and fueling after the run better. But once you know the stuff you're supposed to be doing, it's easier to make good choices.
Yeah. I mean, to your point there, Thomas, though, if you're another, common little mistake that I see from runners, I think also comes from the whole MyFitnessPal type tracking. As you see your calories tick down all day, people get like, I only have 400 calories left, right? And so what that ends up perpetuating is a really nasty cycle where we're under fueling all day and eating too much at night, right? Like we're like, I don't want to see that number decrease. So we're not eating enough in the beginning of the day, which so many of us, I would say like 75% of the people I work with, probably more in the summer, are running in the morning. So if we're expending all that energy in the morning and then not eating enough and like trying to save our nutrition for the second half of the day or the evening, right? It sets us up for disaster because we get way too hungry. We get really far in what we call like that hunger hole. And then we end up eating way too much at night and feeling out of control. And then we wake up the next morning feeling sluggish and gross because, oh my gosh, I ate so much last night, and the cycle continues, right? So a lot of what I do, it sounds like a small thing, right? Is kind of redistributing our nutrition throughout the day. So making sure that it's supporting our runs more, that we have more nutrition up front in our day. And I always tell people, like, we don't want our appetite to accelerate as the day goes on. We actually want it to kind of peter out as the day goes on, right? If we're doing it right. So that's a big, I guess I should say it's a small thing that I feel is a big thing with a lot of runners that we work on.
Go ahead, Meg.
I was going to say, I think that is the number one thing that changed in our lifestyle when we first started working with you, is balancing out like when we're eating, and it just shifted so much more to the morning. And then like you're saying, like you feel better throughout the day because you're not super hungry when dinner rolls around, and your runs are fueled, so those feel better. And then because you are fueled, your recovery feels better. And it's just like this snowball effect that until you actually do it, you don't realize how beneficial it is. So if anyone's listening to this and isn't eating a lot in the morning, just try it and see what happens and fuel your run, and I promise you'll feel better.
I think you have to give an example of what we're eating or something like that, because just to say eat more, because I'll segue. I don't know if you know this, but I'm not a nutritionist, Megan.
No.
But one of the mistakes I want you to go over, like what we eat in the morning, kind of like on a bigger picture than just exactly what we eat. But also I'm going to set us up for the next mistake I think people make with running is the reward system. I ran 3 miles, I can eat 12 donuts kind of mentality. Or I ran today, I can throw nutrition out the window and eat 20 tacos and, drink 20 beers. So, we'll get into that. But for the breakfast stuff.
Well, so let's just talk about a little bit of the differences because we discussed macros in the last episode, a little bit of the pre-run versus post-run macro breakdown and what we really need.
Yeah. So especially if we're running it first thing in the morning and we're getting up and heading out the door, our body needs carbs. Like that's what it's going to pull from on the run. So just have a carb heavy snack. Fat and protein slow down our digestion. They actually stay in our stomach longer. Carbs empty very quickly, right? So if we're prone to, our stomach sloshing or feeling too full, then leave the protein and the fat for afterwards. Just go after the carbs. So that's why, you guys see me talking about graham crackers. I feel like we should be sponsored by like Keebler or something.
Yes.
Honey made, I don't know, bagels. Yeah. Anybody else? Because it's just a simple, easy carb, right? To digest really quickly. It's shelf stable, so something like that beforehand. Some people like to eat, bananas and, things like that, which is fine. Dried fruit, dates, those types of things. And then after is where we need that complete recovery meal that's got enough protein. And I'm talking like 20 to 35 grams of protein, right? Not just a little bit of protein. One egg has 7 grams of protein. It's not going to cut it. Like we need a lot more than that. And then we do need more carbs, right? We're burning through carbohydrates when we're running. So we need some more to replace that. And then we need fat, right? Because fat just keeps us healthy. It's anti-inflammatory. Every single one of our cells needs some fat. So we need that balance, but not until after the run. So it's really kind of understanding what do we need before? Obviously we need carbs during. What do we need after? And really building that up and making sure that quantity is there too, right? Like 1 piece of toast is probably not enough. Like maybe 2 pieces of toast and a piece of fruit for a lot of runners, plus your protein. So it's, for a lot of people, it's an eye opener if they're not used to eating breakfast of, how much food it can be. And I think why I'm so passionate about this was totally me too. Like in grad school, I didn't eat breakfast. Like I wasn't running like I was now, but I ate all my energy at the second half of the day. And I think, just like you were saying, Megan, I feel so much better. Like, I can't believe I ever did that. Like I was in grad school for nutrition and I was still not doing what I was supposed to be doing. And it's like life-changing when you figure it out. So it's like, I kind of want to like shake everybody and be like, come on guys, let's try it. Like it's a good drug. Let's do it.
And I think there is that fear that you just need to get over. Like there's that fear like, oh, if I'm eating more in the morning, I'm going to like gain weight all of a sudden, where it's like, no, it's just balanced throughout the day. It's just.
The first thing I noticed when both of us started doing that was both of us felt better on our runs, which meant better performance. So we were doing workouts and the paces felt easier. They were faster. Like I really feel like the biggest thing that changed in my running, in the past year or so was the nutrition part of it. And it was amazing just to feel like when I had a hard workout that I was fueled properly for it. And it's one of those things that's like, oh, wow, it really does make a difference. And it's such a simple thing that you don't understand how much of a difference it can make. But now I'm thinking I need to eat. I don't think I'm eating enough protein. You did a little chart recently for basically, and one day I pulled out everything. And Megan was like, I think she meant either or, because I was like eating everything.
You gave example like post-run breakfasts, and I think there was like 2 or 3 different ones, but Thomas just assumed that was one meal.
Post-run meal.
And so he was like getting out like everything out of our fridge after his long run, and I was like, what are you doing? And he was like, this is what Megan said to eat. And I was like,
took it very seriously. Yeah. There was no ors, it was all ands.
Yes.
Yeah, it was good. But let's go back and let's talk about, I think, the other mistake people make. And this one seems, to me, it seems like it makes sense that it's not, and maybe people use running as reward. But to me, I feel like you can't put garbage in your system and expect it to run well. So when someone says, okay, I did my run, I can go get a caramel latte with, 2,000 calories of cream sugar and all that stuff. And then, maybe throw a donut in with that because I did my run, or vice versa. I think the other end of the spectrum is, I did a run today. I can drink a 6-pack of beer and, some chili dogs.
I think this reward system it's usually with long runs is when I hear people talking about it, right? Is like, I ran my long run. So then after that's going to be my cheat day or my cheat meal, or I'm going to eat whatever I want after my long run, or I earned it, or I deserve it. I think all of those thoughts are very common for a lot of runners with the long run. But like, if we take a step back, like it's not just a long run, right? Like it's a whole week of training that ends in a long run. And then there's a whole week of training after that. So rather than thinking of it as these like individual discrete events, it's like, let's look at this whole trail of training and look at how our nutrition needs to support the whole thing. So it's not just that we need fuel after a run. We need extra fuel the night before, right? Anybody who's worked with me know I'm going to make you eat extra carbs at dinner the night before a long run. You need a little extra carbs before. Obviously, we're fueling during. We need a little extra nutrition to recover. So when we look at that, it's not like we're eating back all our calories after a run. We're surrounding that run with solid nutrition. So if we're in that mentality, we're going to get ourselves in a little bit of trouble from a recovery standpoint, because we're probably underdoing it when our body actually needs the energy, right? Like I'd rather somebody eat like half a pizza or like a huge plate of pasta the night before, not after, right? Like we need extra energy before too. So that's a huge, flip that I have to switch with a lot of the people I work with to help them figure out that and kind of break down some old mentalities and kind of help build up some new ones that are just more conducive to training and recovery.
Do you blame parents for setting that up in people's minds? Like those rewards that kids get?
So hard, right? Like I catch myself occasionally being like, oh, here's a sucker. It's a good job. And I'm like, I don't think I'm supposed to be doing that.
If you're
but it's
quiet
so hard.
And good, we'll get you some ice cream.
Right. I know. It's hard. But yeah, it's totally deeply ingrained in a lot of things. And it's okay to be thinking it. We just try not to act on it as much.
Say that you are somebody who loves donuts or beer or whatever it is, that you just love it and that's what you want. Mm-hmm. And you do want to, you're running and you burning some calories. How would you say that someone rewards themselves? How do you get those, like, because cookies are good, stuff like that. When do you put those in to your schedule so that they're not taking away from performance?
Right. And I think we try to normalize it. Like if you want a cookie, eat a freaking cookie. Otherwise you're going to eat a dozen cookies because you haven't let yourself eat a cookie. Right. So I think part of it is like, I have a lot of athletes that are like, I just need a little something sweet every night. So we build it in. Like, what do we have? Like, what's satisfying to you? But then, to your point, I get that question a lot too. Like, when is it the best to eat something junky? And I think obviously we try to just fit it in across the board, like we were just saying. But, the other time is honestly, so you say you do your long run on a Saturday morning, I don't want you recovering with donuts, right? Let's go have a good recovery meal with enough protein, fluid, all that kind of stuff. But then maybe you have a donut later, like as your afternoon snack, or maybe you have a donut on your rest day on Sunday. I know you guys aren't resting during grit, but anybody who is resting on a Sunday, like maybe that's the day we have a donut, right? Which most people are like, oh no, it's a rest day. But truthfully, that's probably the best time to throw it in there. I don't know many people that would feel good eating a donut and going for a run. And like I said, it's not great recovery food. So it's just kind of like,
again, psychologically, when people are on rest day, they're already freaking out that they're not burning any calories.
I'm telling them to eat a donut.
Throw a donut on top of it.
Yeah. It's a true test.
They're going down. Yeah. That's funny.
I actually imagine that's probably a pretty big mistake people are making too, is probably under fueling on their rest days, which like for me comes before my long run. Mm-hmm. So that's like a recipe for disaster.
100%. 100%.
See, it's strange because, nobody wants to throw around the word eating disorder. And I think it's very triggering for people. Mm-hmm. But I do feel like runners in our own way, the way that we're regimented, we're type A people, and we like to set like, here's what I get for this. Here's my training schedule for this. I'm going to work these hours. I'm going to do this. We have to like really schedule out and compartmentalize things.
I think people get hyper focused on the wrong things with their nutrition. So truthfully, when people come to me, I would say they're more hyper focused on nutrition than when they leave me, right? They're coming to me with all these thoughts and concerns and preoccupations with this and that and the other thing. And what am I supposed to be doing here? And I think, I'm like wiping my brow, like, job well done, Megan. When these people are leaving me and they're just confident in their nutrition, they're not overthinking it anymore. They've got it figured out. They're allowing themselves a little more flexibility. Like, to me, that's where we want to get, right? So, to your point, I think I don't think I've ever worked with someone that was a runner that didn't have some sort of disordered eating tendencies. I'm not saying an eating disorder, right? Like that's a little bit of a different distinction than just some disordered eating habits, thoughts. It's to your point, Thomas, it's super prevalent in the running community, right? So I think, I'm always listening for those types of things and maybe not always outwardly addressing them, but making sure that our plan wraps around that and encompasses that to help give them new skills to kind of slowly drop some of those thoughts and those practices. Sometimes, of course, we have to address them head on, but a lot of times it's just showing people like us all that when we fuel well, we feel better, we perform better, boom, right? Some of those thoughts just kind of fade.
I mean, I like it because we're not as obsessed with like fat content or this. It's more like, okay, you need some protein. And, for me, I love a roast beef sandwich. And
you do?
It's got some fat in it. But I'm not concerned about it. I'm not like, oh, I better get the lean or this and that. I'm just like, this is protein. Mm-hmm. It's got some fat with it.
Iron rich.
I'm eating it on bread that's got it's got some carbs with it, with the bread. And, I'm just more looking at it more now as like, am I getting the macros I need? And it frees you up to not be as intense about what you're eating.
Right.
Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit here. Megan, you and I had a little bit of a list of things that people tend to get wrong. And one of them is blaming their GI issues on gels. So what is actually maybe the problem?
Have you guys heard this a lot? Like the people you're running with, like, I'm not taking a gel because it hurts my stomach or Yeah. I get that all the time. And I think the number one reason we're having an intolerance or GI issues out there is dehydration. So when we get dehydrated, we don't have as much perfusion to our GI tract, right? When we're dehydrated, it's probably hot. So a lot of our blood is going to our skin, right? To keep us cool. Obviously our blood's going to our working muscles. So our GI tract is just not preferentially, given what it needs. And that's when we have stomach sloshing. Thinking back to, I'm trying to, whatever Olympic trials it was, where Shalane Flanagan didn't do well at the end. And afterwards, when they interviewed her, she said all the nutrition she took was not leaving her stomach, right? She said that like, it didn't feel like she was digesting
I think
anything.
that was 2016.
Was it?
Was that 2016?
I can't remember what
Yeah.
it was. And that's a perfect example, right? If we get too dehydrated, sometimes our nutrition just doesn't go anywhere. It hangs out in our stomach.
Well, that was an extremely hot day
It was.
in Los Angeles.
It was.
If you remember, that was my favorite all time. Like that's one of my favorite races of all time.
Right, you got
watching.
chills
Des
thinking
Linden
about it.
Just coming, oh, so good.
It was a good one.
Neb and Galen Rupp. Yeah, that was awesome.
Mm-hmm. So that happens sometimes, but then the opposite happens sometimes too, right? Like our GI tract is in like overdrive and we're like searching for a porta potty or a tree to hide behind. So those are kind of the two extremes that happen when we get dehydrated, and immediately people are like, it's the gel, right? The gel did it. Whereas the gel might have triggered the response, but it was the dehydration that actually caused you not to tolerate that gel. So sometimes we take a step back, right? Try to figure out the hydration piece, then reintroduce some of the gels that, maybe we thought were the problem, and all of a sudden they're fine, so.
Can salt tablets help with that as well?
Oh,
like,
100%.
Because you can retain.
100%.
Okay. So, and I think we've talked about salt tablets before, but there's tablets out there. It seems counterintuitive. I would think they dry you out, but in reverse, they help you retain the water instead of letting it pass you.
Right. So there's two pieces to our hydration. There's the fluid piece and the sodium piece. So we need to get both of those, and we're losing both through our sweat. We're losing a ton of sodium and obviously a ton of fluid. So we're going to absorb the fluid we're drinking better if there's sodium around. Like Meg and I were talking, we were running last weekend, like we both chugged through our Scratch water bottles and I filled it with water. And it's like, when I drink that just sloshes. Like it just doesn't feel like the water absorbs well. Whereas the Scratch like sits great, absorbs. I don't even know that I drank it, so the common denominator of why that's going on is the sodium. It really helps with that absorption. And obviously down the line, cramping, if people are not getting enough sodium, that can cause muscle cramps. So it can be a big piece of that hydration puzzle too.
Yeah, that was actually another one of the items I put on here, was thinking that your leg cramps are neuromuscular, which I know they can be, but like after working with you, I had suffered from late in the marathon getting leg cramps, specifically in my calves, like every single time. And I was convinced that it was neuromuscular and that I needed to go see this PT guy and that I needed to be doing these different stretches and
She thought it
running
was genetic
differently.
too. She was like,
Because my dad got them and my brother has gotten them. I was like, it's genetic. And I had all of these thoughts in my head, and then worked with you and we like really nailed my hydration, and
you got the salt test.
I did not get muscle cramps in the marathon. So I think that people should probably focus on their hydration before they assume it's some crazy neuromuscular thing.
Hydration is the easiest thing to rule out, right? I think I always go for like the low hanging, I don't know, tree, apple.
It's
spread.
so tough though.
It is.
Like normally, like, trying to drink 80 ounces of water a day in the winter for me is almost impossible. Now in the summertime when we're running, I can finish 2 32-ounce bottles of water within like 10 minutes. And so how much of it is intuitive and how much of it is, you have to train your body to take in more? Because I'm like, maybe they got it wrong. Maybe I don't need it in the winter and I need it in the summer. But I mean, before I started focusing on it, I could have a cup of coffee in the morning and not drink another thing of water until like almost dinner time,
Thirst is a terrible mechanism, right? To like only listen to thirst is awful, because by the time we're thirsty, we're already dehydrated. And then when we get really dehydrated, we don't feel thirsty anymore. I mean, it's not a good, thing to rely on from that thirst. I will say some people seem to have a better thirst mechanism than others. This is not research-based. This is just what I see working with people. Some people seem to be fine kind of relying on that, but I would say at least 50% of people are not and need more of a plan. I'm an otter. I would definitely not drink enough fluid if I wasn't, trying to pay attention to it. So I think, a lot of times we do need some sort of strategy.
Okay, switching gears again. How about taking supplements and taking the wrong supplements? How do we know which ones we should be taking?
We probably don't need as many supplements as we're taking as we think we need. The supplement industry is one of the largest, right? It's like a multi-billion-dollar industry. So they're always trying to convince us we need something for our training, that next step, that next edge. No shock here as a sports dietitian. The fundamental of good, solid performance is nutrition, right? Nutrition, training, and then maybe we like sprinkle some supplements on top. Like if we're talking about like, an ice cream sundae here, like supplements would be the sprinkles, not the ice cream. And I think sometimes we are led to believe that supplements are the ice cream. So I think it's what do we need? And I always, if we're going after a big goal, whether it's a BQ, a PR, sub 3, sub 4, whatever we're going after, if it's a stretch goal for us, we have to make sure that our lab work is in line before we start blanketly supplementing with everything we think we need, B12 and iron. And, let's see where our personal values are to see what we actually need to supplement. And I will say, 90% of the runners I work with are on some sort of supplementation to get their levels where they need to be. It's not uncommon that we need to, but it's not a blanket across the board. All runners need X, Y, and Z.
It's so weird. We have a sponsor for the podcast called Inside Tracker, and you can go get a blood test and it can tell you what, what you're missing from your diet. Even if you're having a great nutritional diet. I mean, Megan, for example, like you found out just by adding some iron, which seems to be the easiest fix, like almost possible. It's like everybody's low on iron, that at least female runners. And you started taking that and you felt better almost immediately, right?
Yeah, I think it was like 2 weeks or so of supplementation with the iron. And it was like, I could tell a big difference in my runs.
Yeah, that's huge. And I was iron deficient for a long time too. It seems to be okay now. Now it's my vitamin D. So when I got my Inside Tracker back, my vitamin D was still in the toilet, even though I was supplementing, right? So I think, again, like obviously I wasn't supplementing enough in my pasty white skin in Ohio. So I doubled it.
Get out in that sunshine.
I know.
And D is important for bones, right?
So there's some really good research that if our vitamin D is under 20 as runners, our risk of stress fracture is doubled. Like that stinks, right? And it's very common that I see people's that low. Yeah.
Can you overdose on D?
You can. It's fat soluble, so your body will accumulate more and more and more and more. And there are people who have gotten toxicity in the literature, but I've personally never seen anyone who got a toxicity from it. But yeah, you don't want to just blanketly take 10,000 IUs of vitamin D every day. You need to kind of.
But taking it, if you took like a multivitamin that had vitamin D in it, or, whatever, you're probably not going to hurt yourself.
No, definitely not going to hurt yourself, but you might not be getting enough, right? Like, I think I'm a classic example of that. I was taking like triple what would be in a multivitamin and my level was still 30 and we wanted over 40. So
well, how do you get it up at that point? Do you just take more?
Yeah, take more. And again, this not research, just my own mind turning. I was taking like a gummy vitamin D and I decided to switch to, a liquid vitamin D, thinking like, I don't know, maybe I'll absorb it better. So,
you know who loves gummies? Megan.
Gummy vitamins.
We have gummy zinc. We have gummy D3s. We got gummy C's. I mean, if it comes in gummy form.
Oh yeah, I'm the same way because you're more likely to take it if you're just walking past the cupboard and you don't need to go get a glass of water. I had gummy iron at one point because I wasn't taking my iron and it worked. So
yeah. There you
Candy.
go.
Yeah, candy. However you get it in, right?
Yeah.
And then since we're talking grit and increasing mileage, I know when I was in peak marathon training, I started taking the omega-3s. Is that pretty much across the board, or was that specifically for me, or is that for anyone up in there?
There's some really good research on omega-3s that it helps increase muscle recovery and muscle soreness, right? So what's that, Thomas?
I was just gonna say, damn it, I put them in the cart this morning. I said, Meg, do you want more omega-3s? And she's like, nah. And I was like, okay, because they're expensive. It was like $40 for the bottle. And I was like, okay, I won't get them. Now I'm going to have to go back and order my omega-3s.
Why are some supplements so expensive? Can you explain this?
So specifically to omega-3, right? I mean, the one I take, I think it's probably the one I told you guys to take, is like $49 for a month's supply.
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
not cheap. But when you look at the actual dosage, so just getting like a fish oil is not super helpful because we want the actual omega-3, and like a generic fish oil off the shelf usually has like 300 milligrams of omega-3 and a ton of omega-6, which we don't want that. That's why it's cheaper. So like a good omega-3 supplement that has a high dose, like 2000 milligrams of omega-3 is going to be kind of expensive, but I'll tell you what, that's one of the supplements that I'm like 100% on board with. Increased mileage, increased soreness. I'm like making sure I'm getting that every single day because it can't hurt.
Damn it.
Right? It's good for your heart. It's good for your cholesterol. It's good for your brain. It's good for your eyes. It's good for your joints. Right. So it can't hurt. And it's been proven to really help with that muscle soreness and recovery. So that's one thing that oftentimes as people are kicking up mileage, I'm like, hey, would you be willing to spend on an omega-3? So
chances are if it's of someone marathon training for a big goal, they're going to be like, yep.
100%. Let's sign me up, right?
Whatever you say.
Well, while you guys were talking, I just purchased my omega-3s, and I'll tell you which one that we get is
the one we were just talking about.
Megan recommended. It's the Ultimate Omega Sport 2x, 2x. I don't know if it's times or 2x, but it's a black bottle, and we don't get paid. This isn't a commercial or anything like that. I'm just giving you the deets because I know they just talked it up like you're gonna want this,
right?
And
the brand is Nordic Naturals. That's the one, and they have a specific sport line, and a high dose one.
Ultimate.
Yeah.
Let me try it. Nordic Naturals Ultimate Omega Sport 2x.
I swear we're not sponsored. We just really like it. But if you want to.
Yeah. Otherwise, you got to eat like whale blubber, and nobody wants to do that.
Well, but truthfully, so salmon has, gosh, don't quote me on this. I want to say it's like somewhere between 300 and 600 milligrams of omega-3 per like 4-ounce serving, right? And that pill we were just talking about, if you take 2 of them, it's over 2000 milligrams. And the research to help with muscle recovery is high, right? You'd literally have to eat like a pound of salmon to get that much.
Every day?
Yeah. And that, probably wouldn't be good from a mercury
pound of salmon
perspective.
every day.
It's expensive.
Yeah. Plus, you basically start to look like a bear. Standing by a river, just pulling salmon out all day.
It's definitely how that works.
All right. So that is our podcast for this week. Again, if you want your question answered, we'd love to hear from you. So go over to the Anchor app and record your audio question. If you're too shy to do that, you can always email us. Meg, what's the email address?
It's fuelforthesoulpodcast@gmail.com.
And Feathers is standing by to answer your questions. So let's get them in and we can talk about it. Of course, I'll always be the one that knows nothing and gets to ramble on, while Megan will give you the important information, and my Megan, will keep us all on track.
All right. So thank you, Nick, for submitting your question.
Thanks for listening, and we hope you tune in next time. We've got some great questions coming up for the next episode.